Hello and welcome everybody to the Pick Six podcast, where I have signed up for Peacock this week, as have thousands of others in the state of Nebraska. Sam McKewon along with Evan Bland and Tom Shatel. Have you gentlemen signed up for Peacock yet?
Unless they add the Rockford Files, I'm not doing it.
They may be on there. Yellowstone is on there.
I'm gonna be at the game.
Yeah.
I don't need it, do I?
Right.
Man, I have the first 4 seasons of The Office on DVD, so if I need it at that point, I'll just whip those guys out.
They have all the seasons of The Office.
Yeah.
They purchased from Paramount the entire Yellowstone series, which makes no particular sense, but it's there. And they're going to have Nebraska football this weekend.
There's always one bar in Omaha that has it, and I understand it's a very expensive thing for a bar to get, but there's one that has it, and I probably won't say what it is. I don't want them. I can probably give them a lot of business, but so I think there'll be others as well that have it. So go down the street, your favorite corner spot. It might be on, but I don't know. It's $6. Is that what it is?
That's pretty cheap. There's two versions, I think, and the older, more expensive version that gives you The Office is $11. So that's the one that we got.
And then you can cancel right away, right?
I'll cancel after the basketball season. Husker basketball is going to be on there like 10 times. So, we're back in the pay-per-view era. I don't remember what the last Husker football pay-per-view game was, but I feel like it was in the Big 12.
That's a great question.
2010
The
Kansas,
last
maybe,
one.
when they played Turner Gill. I know that 08 Kansas was on pay-per-view, and that was a great game. That was Joe Gans against Todd Reesing, the last round. It was like 48-38. It was a great game.
That was 08.
08, yeah. That was a great game. On pay-per-view. It wasn't on regular TV.
And I believe, don't ask me why, I was still Mangino. I remember him on the sideline in the biggest leather jacket I've ever seen in my life. Just walking up and down the sidelines in this leather jacket. I'm going, there he is. And they were on top of the world right then. They were really, really good. And
It took them 15 years to get back to where Mangino had them.
yeah, that's a whole other podcast.
It is, but they're back there. Like
Yes.
that's a good football program. You were down there to visit your daughter, and you mentioned in your first downs that you had, or maybe it was on a post, like you went into a KU bar and it was full, and they were all watching football.
Oh, we couldn't. There was a line down the block, and there was nowhere to sit. So I basically stood the whole game watching it with my wife and daughter. I'm thinking, KU football, huh? This has come a long way.
That's right. It is
For the big Iowa State game, right?
It was.
I mean, I saw Sandy Budo last night at the Creighton game, and he was. We were talking about it. Was that game was actually harder than the Oklahoma game in some ways because Iowa State's good, and they're on the road, and you're coming down from that game. So, anyway.
Nebraska. Now you want to talk about what was harder. So Nebraska goes to Michigan State, and I thought that was going to be a hard game because I thought it was going to be a letdown.
Yeah.
And we got up there, and by the end of the game, I think there was probably 50,000 fans there. There was.
Sure.
At the end of the game, it was a little bit intimidating. At the beginning of the game, it was about as loud as this room right now. It was bad. And Nebraska played like it. It's almost like they needed the crowd to show up and get a little feisty before their defense kicked into gear. And I thought it was a huge missed opportunity, didn't you? And I felt like Rule acted like that after the game.
Yeah, well, and you asked him about, especially defensively, it felt like they were just kind of sleepwalking a little bit. I mean, I
thought they were beat up, and he did not.
He didn't agree with that.
No, he did not.
You had Tony White talking about getting the signals in or the signs in, and yeah, it was odd. Like for the first time, the defense didn't get its Superman cape, and the offense didn't get a big play, and like that was the difference.
Yep.
Like that was what it was, and that's a tough one, man. I mean, we could be sitting here talking about bowl eligibility,
which bowl we're going to,
and being in a tie with Iowa atop the West, and instead, like there's kind of a little bit of nerves now. You kind of look at Maryland, and it's like, well, you know, if you don't get that one, then you're counting on Wisconsin or Iowa. It definitely, the tenor of this home stretch absolutely changed with that one.
I think it just spoke to where the program is right now. They're not ready yet. and they don't know how to do it still, and they're still flawed. The defense has played great, but they took a day off because that's where things are right now.
Yep.
So they haven't learned yet.
Yep.
They're still learning. And,
That was kind of a Frost era. I'm not saying it was but it was a game that you're like, yeah, that's the team from the Frost era.
and that's a game.
One score loss.
That's a game where Michigan State in that atmosphere. Michigan State didn't play great. They just made a few more plays than Nebraska.
Didn't play great, no.
And but we talked. The Monday message this week. Back in college, I don't know if they have this in Nebraska. I think they probably have. But way back in the day at Missouri, they had a class that was called Football Coaching 101. It was literally called Football 101, and the football program offered the class, and it was most of it was a few football fans, but it was mostly sports writers from the J school who wanted to learn about football.
Yeah.
And they said a GA or two. It might have been like an assistant coach, but I took it one semester because it was easy. I wanted the grade, and I wanted to learn more about the program. And that's what I feel like this year is with Matt Rule. This is like
We're
Football
learning about
101. On Monday, he talked about embracing the moment, the pressure. Welcome the heat. You want the pressure. Learn to deal with it. They won't grow until they get it. I thought that was great.
Have you guys ever been around a coach like that where it really does feel like every time he's talking to the media, he's talking to his team? Like it's a different vibe than anything that I can think of.
I've been to coaches who talked down to us. Some who didn't want to talk at all. This is unusual, and sometimes, the thing he said about Michigan this week or the scouting was, somebody said, "Well, was that an accident?" And I said, "I don't think anything's an accident with him. I think he was. It came out, but I think he wanted to say something. Wanted to throw it out there and let everybody know he's mad about it.
Yep.
But not go any farther than that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You kind of slipped it in there,
Right.
like really quickly.
But I think it was on purpose. I do. I mean, I don't know. I think he meant to say something, and that's what he said. But I love it.
And then we followed, Mitch with the Athletic,
Yeah.
who used to work here,
Right.
followed up on it
Absolutely.
at the end. Like
Right.
Mitch caught it, and he's like, and then Matt kind of had to address it.
He didn't want to. He didn't want to, did he? He wanted to slip it in there.
That's right.
But no, I think he wanted it. He wanted it known that I think. But don't you feel like we talked about that Monday? That
Oh, yeah.
everything is on purpose, but I just love. It's every week we get an update on where they are as a team. Okay, this week we're trying to embrace pressure.
Well, it wasn't just. It is Message Monday, and it's also like stand up for my guys Monday a little bit. I mean, that's what he's
Yes.
talking about. Like, he mentioned it. Like, okay, Ryan Walters at Purdue is talking facts, as Rule said.
Yes,
and his guys are saying, "What do you think?"
And
Let's
he
stand up.
mentioned Harburg. Well, I'm coaching him for next year and the year after that. And some people kind of took that as mean, well, he's the guy next year. No. He's not necessarily. He's just saying that to calm everybody down. Like, 'cause people were ready to throw Harburg away after last Saturday and move on to Chuba. Jump past Sims and go right to Chuba. Why isn't he playing? And I think that was a message to everybody, calm down. Harburg's the guy, and he's my guy. And it was a message to Harburg, you're my guy. Mm-hmm. Don't worry about it. And I'm coaching you for next year and the year after that. That doesn't mean anything. It just means that he's got his back. So I like that. And I like the fact that he said what he did about the replays and the calls. Got to be careful with that. You can't come off as a whiner. You can't come off as a coach who's sour grapes, because there's bad calls. Nebraska's had calls go their way this year too. So, but that was a message to his team. I got you. I'm going to defend you on this. So, that's a guy that you can play for.
Let's go to the Michigan thing for a second. So he did mention Michigan. You wrote about it on Monday. Good column on Monday about Michigan. So here we are. It's Wednesday. Michigan got a notice of allegations from the Big Ten. The Big Ten is trying to move on this quickly versus waiting because I think the ADs and the coaches in the Big Ten want them to do that. Michigan's response back to the Big Ten is, yeah, these other teams do it too. And here's a spreadsheet that shows what they did to us. What do we think of that as a response to the Big Ten?
Well, I think it's funny in a way. The old saying is, there's a reason why coaches don't turn each other in for cheating because they all do it. They'll turn you in too. I think it's okay, fine. You've got, show me what you got. We'll get to this later, but right now the topic is still you. You did all this, and so don't try to change the subject. It's like somebody's kid, right? You change the subject. Yeah, you did it too. No, we're talking about you. But
I think America is going to root for Penn State this weekend. And Penn State's never had anybody root for them.
Well,
That's right.
But this year, this game, that response.
Here's what's interesting. Everything you're hearing is it's going to be a 2-game suspension. And that's the word out there. So today's Wednesday. Well, we're getting closer to Saturday to our, if it's a 2-game, it includes Ohio State.
Right.
And so, which I think it should. I think if you're going to make it hurt, it has to include Ohio State. Mm-hmm. Going to Maryland, that's not going to hurt. Maybe a little. But it'll hurt if they lose a game because of it.
Right.
So I don't know. But this is purely turning into a Michigan-Ohio State politics grudge match. We hate each other, and we're going to drag each other into the mud, and you guys all sort it out. So that could be kind of fun to watch as somebody on the outside. But yeah, it doesn't excuse Michigan from anything they've done. Here they are trying to change the subject.
A couple of things stood out to me is, one, again, Michigan's response to this is basically to snitch on other schools, which is something we would never tell our kids to do.
Don't you love the Big Ten?
I mean, I don't know that every school would do what Michigan's done. Two, that the other schools in the league dislike Michigan so much that they would help Purdue.
Is it Michigan or Harbaugh?
It could be both. It could certainly be just Harbaugh. But what Michigan turned in is evidence that other teams hate them so much that they're willing to cheat to help Purdue. And I don't know if it's cheating. It's a little bit more of a gray area with what they did for Purdue. But
Might be
we're
evening the
going to
playing
help you, if we can, to beat this team that all of us don't like. And it's like Michigan and Ohio State are not really on the same, they used to be hey, the league is run by these two teams. It's not that way. It's like these two teams are different now. And Ohio State's almost like the man of the people. And Michigan is not. And again, if you think about the years that Penn State football has existed, and okay, everybody rooted against Penn State after the Sandusky stuff, as understood. But nobody's really ever been a big Penn. This week, Penn State's going to be America's team. People want to see Michigan lose, and Penn State can actually beat them. In theory, it's just striking to me. Part of this is that Michigan's just become sort of villainous.
Well, I think the part that's interesting too is what's Tony Petitti's response. He's inserted as this TV executive guru as the commissioner, and you're in a tough spot. Either you back the team with evidence against it that's a flagship member of your conference, or you side with the other 13 coaches and
Everybody's
ADs
watching.
and everybody else. So it's a big precedent. It comes on the heels of the Kansas basketball situation where they did what they did and there was no real consequence. The CFP has washed its hands of it officially, said that this is an NCAA issue. They're not going to have it in time. So what Petitti does, and Tom, you mentioned the timeline with Ohio State coming up in a few weeks, really fascinating, really interesting precedent.
Well, The Big Ten normally, what would Jim Delaney do? I don't know. Normally, you go, well, the easy out is, we're going to let the NCAA do this. But no, this is in your backyard, and this is your problem. So I think it's important to take care of the conference and do right by the conference. In the words integrity and credibility come to mind here. Does the league have that? Does the commissioner have that? And it's not about the old boys network, Michigan, Ohio State together. I think that has gradually been torn apart by realignment. Like the more you add, the more outside voices are in. It's not the old Big Ten club. It's and now you're bringing in more next year. And I think COVID started to really tear that apart in a lot of ways. With Ohio State and Nebraska leading the way on, and so a lot of different voices, everybody kind of fighting each other. So it's a different deal. I think this is, if Michigan had Lloyd Carr or who's the guy at San Diego State?
Brady Hoke.
Brady Hoke. They wouldn't be quite as villainous. Harbaugh's a great villain.
He is.
This is about Harbaugh in a lot of ways. It's about Michigan being upper crust, arrogant Michigan as well. And, like I said, the higher moral ground is like quicksand for them right now. There's nothing left. But the Big Ten's more like the SEC than they want to admit.
Yeah.
They're turning you're to turn me in, I'm going to turn you in.
Isn't it interesting? Like we've talked on this podcast before about when Nebraska went to the Big Ten, it lost all of the cachet and the mystique that it built up over the years with those rivals. I wonder, as the Big Ten continues to grow, if that sort of erodes with the powers that be, with Ohio State, with Michigan. And it feels like this is be a really interesting litmus test of just how much sway Michigan still has with all these things changing around the league.
That's a great question.
Well, it does have sway, but you're right. I think there's going to have less sway. But Ohio State has sway too.
Sure.
And some would say Ohio State is the real power broker. Now with Gene Smith on his way out, who knows? But yeah, I think that's going to change. But I just think this is a tough one because if there was anybody else, imagine if it was Nebraska, what would they probably throw them out of the league, right?
Just ask Desmond Howard, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd like to see Michigan get spanked hard and penalized, and let them come back and say, this isn't fair, we're going to leave. I'd love to hear that.
Yeah.
You won't hear that. But there'll be some Michigan fans that'll be really pissed at the Big Ten. But the Big Ten will be shooting itself in the foot. But that's not their fault. They didn't cause it. Michigan caused it. But, if you throw Michigan out of the playoff or you cause them to lose and they drop out, that hurts because you've won one national title since 2002, and they don't come on very often.
Nope. So far, Ohio State remains higher ranked in the CFP, which I can only assume is based on schedule, based on watching the teams. Michigan's a better team, but that's the way it is for now.
Well, let's see what happens next week.
Let's see what happens
next
week.
Yep. Here's the thing about the College Football Playoff Committee saying, well, we're not worried about that. We can't, we have to let other people enforce all this. We can't do it. But they all vote. And everybody's got a conscience. And I'm not, the chairman of the committee might say, don't use this when you vote, but you're going to, if you think Michigan cheated and they shouldn't be in this thing, everybody's got to vote. Everybody's got a conscience. So
Right, and if Washington, Florida State end up undefeated, you can just as easily be like, you can do stuff there to kind of manipulate it. Okay, let's go. That's good. That's a good discussion. I do want to go back to Harburg. So Nebraska 5-4. What are they? 3-4, 3-3, 3-3 in the Big Ten. They play Maryland this weekend. They're going to see a good quarterback. Maryland's quarterback is legitimately good, and he doesn't necessarily play for the best team, but he is a good player. He's probably one of the 15 best quarterbacks in college football. Makes plays, probably has a chance to play in the NFL. Probably not quite as good as his brother, but he's good. And then you have Nebraska and their situation. Nebraska has a quarterback that's going to be in, I think, his 7th start. Really candid guy, really transparent, I think, even in ways that, Adrian wasn't. Like he'll just say, yeah, I was supposed to do, like he's very honest about his own weaknesses. And then, it's evident to me that Matt Marcus Satterfield wants him to kind of play like a loose and free, and that Matt Rule maybe wants that, but, simultaneously doesn't understand some of the decisions he makes. It's just a really interesting thing to watch. And this offense over the next 3 games, I think somewhere in there, they've got to have a big game, and it's going to be on Harburg, and it's going to be on Satterfield to produce it.
Well, what Satterfield said Tuesday about he wants old Heinrich back, the guy who can, run through somebody's mouth. Like, it's coming full circle from what we had in the spring. I mean, remember in the spring, Satterfield said kind of running hard was his superpower and all this. And then the discussion as he became the starter was he needs to learn how to slide and protect himself.
Yeah.
And he kind of pushed back on it, but he kind of went with it. And now they're going back the other way. It just feels like, I don't know that they've done him a ton of favors in terms of kind of defining what they want him to be. And some of the big hits he took against Purdue, I thought, were because he was somewhere in between. Like the instinct was to lay a shoulder into a guy, but he knew he shouldn't. So instead of sliding, he just kind of let up and took a hit. It'll be interesting if they can kind of get him back to the guy he was against Northern Illinois and late against Colorado, just the guy who's reading and reacting, because his description of the interception that he threw down to the 4 was interesting, wasn't it?
Yes.
Just talking about how he had repped that play, whatever it was, 50 times, and he'd always thrown it to the middle.
Yeah,
and so
Bullock went to the middle every time.
But because it was different, because the defender fell on the double move, he didn't see that and throw it to where he was. He threw it to where they had repped it. That's interesting to me that was what happened on that play.
I think it's really interesting that he said that. I watched on the replay against Michigan State. They have a camera angle behind him, and Bullock is going this way, and then he just kind of goes this way. And yeah, Harburg probably should have thrown it up the line, as they say, skinny, keep it skinny. But at the same time, I don't blame him for thinking that's where Bullock was going to go. That's where I thought Bullock was going to go. And after the play, I remember tweeting, I'm not going to speculate on what Bullock was trying to do there, because I thought Bullock was supposed to break to the middle. He didn't. And so the play looked like Harburg had no idea what he was doing. Right. Anyway, sorry, Tom. Go ahead.
No, I wasn't there yesterday, but if Bullock had gone in the middle, well, there were 2 Michigan State guys there as well. If you throw that ball to the middle, it's still going. It might get picked off again. Right. So you might get criticized for throwing a ball to where a bunch of guys are. So, hey, it's a miscommunication. It's football. It happens. You can't obsess over it. You got to correct it and move on. These guys aren't perfect. They're not all Americans. But I like the fact that Harburg takes it, and he's very honest and raw, and he'll brutally say what happened and what he should have been doing. But he can't obsess over it. He can't think too much. That's the problem. The quarterback spot is a thinker's spot. It's like a golfer. All this stuff in your head, and you're trying to. Right. They want you to play loose and air it out. It's hard because you got to look at all this stuff, and it takes very few can really do it well. But I think he's been good, but he's got to get better. I mean, he's been good enough to get them to where they are. I don't know how much better he can get, but I'm going to give the guy a chance. Let me ask you something. I thought about the other day, Monday. Rule says that Harburg Well, he really wants to be the quarterback. He wants it so bad. Is that why he's playing? Did the other guy? Is that saying something about the other guys?
I don't think it's saying anything about.
If they don't want him as much.
I don't want to say that it's saying anything about Sam's. I'll just say that I think.
Why did he say that?
I think what he's trying to say in that moment is Harburg wants to be out there. He wants to be competitive.
Yeah.
I think people may maybe he's trying to defend, like you said, he's defending his guy. People are saying, what's he doing? Is he being competitive? Is he being tough? Why is he hesitating? And I think they're saying, I think he's trying to build him up. So
okay.
Well, he was talking about young
guys, right? I don't think it has
right?
anything to do with Purdy. I don't think it has anything to do with Sims.
I think he was talking about young guys and pressure. And,
Yeah.
if you're a freshman, maybe I don't want to play as much because there's so much on the
Sims
line.
is on his 4-game thing. So, if he plays, he loses a year of eligibility. So, I understand his sensitivity to it. I don't know that there is any.
I didn't take it as a slight to the others. I just thought it was really interesting that he really wants it.
Oh yeah.
So I think he was defending him, but it's kind of like, I'll give the guy a break. Yeah, he's making some mistakes, but he really wants it. It's just
right.
To an average Husker fan, that's nice, but
Sure,
they want results.
they do.
Do you guys think is Harburg is he a stopgap guy or is he a developmental guy? Which kind of quarterback is he? Is he the guy that you invest in for 2 or 3 years and see the growth, or is he the guy because the starter got hurt and they're a month away from going into the portal and finding somebody? Is he kind of the filler? What's his?
I think
role?
he's not going to have 3 years to develop. They're in a position where they have to start next year. I mean, he's not going to get 3 years to at the end of the rainbow he finally becomes this guy. No, they don't have that kind of time. Nobody does. They expect most quarterbacks you recruit out of high school are going to have a year to either redshirt or develop, and then it's go time, right? So it's going to be go time next year, and he's either going to go or he's not. So I think he's got potential, Evan. He does. He's made some nice plays, but he's got to clean it up, and whether or not he can clean it up or not is in these next 3 games. And then you got spring ball. Spring ball. You don't know much in spring ball. It depends on who they get in the portal. But I think they're going to have to get somebody in the portal just to throw into the competition, and if not start next year. But I think Harburg's the guy you want on your team, though. I really do. I think I remember when Eric Crouch was on the sideline from Bobby Newcomb and that one Cal game, and he threw him a pass and he ran 80 yards and he was on fire and he was catching passes and running reverses, and I can see a role like that for Harburg. He's a guy you want in your offense who can make a play, but do you want him to be the quarterback? I'll tell you one thing. Santa Fe wants to throw it. And, we never got to see enough of Sims to see if he could get out of that hole he dug himself into. But he's going to want to throw it. So I think the answer to your question is I think he's got potential, but he ain't going to get 3 years to. Yeah, he's got to do it quicker.
I'd sign off on that. I think we're on 2 sides of the same coin. So what I would say is, yeah, I agree with that. I do think he's got tools. I think that they have to decide what kind of offense they want to run. And right now, you have a hybrid of 49er, Dolphin, Eagle stuff, NFL, run game with 92 option. And that's not going to work long term. It's just it's too much of a Frankenstein. And so, you're asking him on one play to know how to run a load option, on another play how to run a speed option, and learn and know how to do it with apparently. And they haven't taught him just pitch the damn ball. You do pitch the ball and let the fast guy beat an angle on a safety. Let him try. They haven't got him there yet.
Because they don't know how to coach it.
And the one time they do, the one time he pitched it against Michigan State, it's a short side option into the boundary, and the guy runs out of bounds. Like there's just stuff that they're not. And who was on the call? Spencer Tillman, who knows the option better than anybody.
Right.
He was the pitch back for Oklahoma in the '80s. He's like, I don't like that play. He would know. He's like the expert on that because he would have been the guy getting the pitch into the boundary.
Absolutely.
So, like, if he says it isn't the right play, it's not the right play. And so, and by the way, that was a great call by Spencer Tillman because he, about 7 different times in that broadcast, critiques Nebraska for various things, but specifically their running backs. And their running backs got to be better in some areas, especially on that wide run. Fleeks has just got to take the hole. Grant was trying to go outside too much. Like, there's things they got to fix. Back to the point. They have to decide what offense they want to run, and then they have to decide what kind of quarterback they want. And Heinrich Haarberg, I do think, has tools. Like, if you compare his tools to the guy at Iowa, and we don't even need to say his name. He's trying the best he can at 6'2.5" and 265 pounds to do what he can do. But, I mean, I would take Heinrich tomorrow.
Sure.
So, like, there's a number of players in the league that I think you'd swap out what they're doing for Haarberg's, but they have to decide what they want to run. And, again, Satterfield's got to have a good game here. And some of it has to be his players need to execute for him, but simultaneously, they need to have a game on the way out here. It's probably not going to happen against Iowa because Iowa will, mess with you where you walk. That's Iowa. But the 2 defenses they're going to play the next 2 weeks are not awesome. Maryland's defense isn't great, and neither is Wisconsin's.
Yeah.
Wisconsin's defense isn't great. You got to have a game where you could put up 350 yards and 24 points. It can't be 220 and 15, So we'll see.
I think that's,
Well, and I just think about, in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, the transfer portal is going to open up, and Nebraska is going to be in there, and I think we all agree they're going to be looking for a quarterback. But what I'm curious about is, like, how much, one, does the next 3 weeks inform kind of how they evaluate that position, what they're looking for, and then 2, what kind of guy are you looking for in the portal in a month? Is it?
I think you got to look at the whole staff, Evan.
What do you mean?
You got to look at the whole operation. It isn't just the quarterback.
But you're going to have to make a
decision.
decision. No, you can't. But you're going to have to make a
fair.
decision. Like, are you going to go after a veteran, a young guy? Do you want a speed guy? Do you want someone who's pass first?
You need to decide what your staff wants to do.
Yes.
You need to decide if you're going to have a quarterback coach.
And who they go after, I think, is really telling in that process. And do they know what they want to run? Maybe they do.
I just think what you said is all dead on. They've got to have a summit meeting right now, in real time. Can't wait until the end of the season to do it. They're probably talking about this behind closed doors now. What do we want to be? What offense do we want to run?
Right.
And because what they're doing now isn't what they signed up for, and that's great. They adjusted to the talent. That's what you want. That's why they've got 5 wins. But you're right. I believe they need to go together. The quarterback room right now, given the state of the quarterback room, it needs another quarterback. It needs somebody who can go out and make plays. And you're not worried about interceptions. You're not worried about fumbles. You're going to have a guy who's going to, Joe Gans come to mind, who's going to keep you in the right play, and he's going to make a play, and he's not going to give it to the team. And that's, to me, identity they want. It's the identity every coach wants. But if you're going to play really good defense, great defense, you have that kind of quarterback, you don't need a rambler gambler kind of guy.
Right.
You need a guy who's going to help you move down the field and win the game. So I think they need to go find that guy, and if Haarberg can beat him out, fine, but you better have him on board. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You can't go in with these 3 guys. If Chuba was the guy, Chuba would be playing.
And isn't it worth mentioning too? I mean, Haarberg, the staff last year kind of forgot about him, did they not? I mean, they
Well, yeah.
I mean, what he did not benefit from a lot of development and attention.
Oh, yeah, but we can't blame him for
generally
that.
speaking. I know, but and even into the
We
spring,
can't blame
like
Mark
there
Whipple
was
for that. We can't blame him for that.
all I'm
That's not his
saying.
fault.
All I'm saying is like there's growth that typically takes place early in a quarterback's career.
Sure.
That maybe wasn't Haarberg's experience, and even into the spring, like we were,
I
people were
promise you this isn't
speculating.
a trick question. Was Casey Thompson a better quarterback than anything Nebraska's putting out there right now?
Yes.
Yes. Agreed. Thank you.
And
They got him because of Mark Whipple and because of NIL. They didn't, that's part of the deal.
Satterfield would have loved Casey Thompson.
I
in
think
a lot of
so.
ways.
Yeah,
He
sure.
wouldn't be running the ball. He'd be chucking it every time.
And they didn't want, Casey was here, but he was hurt. Nobody knew, and Casey wanted
Yeah.
certain guarantees, and you all know that. But my point being this, that, you have to, coming off of this season, you're talking about the portal. I get what you're saying. When you make the comment about do they want this or do they want this, what does the quarterback that they're going after want? And what that quarterback, if any quarterback is a quarterback of a quarterback salt, they're going to ask Nebraska, and what is your plan?
Right. Sure.
What are you guys doing here? I don't want to come in and run the option. I'm not running the load option. The guy from Arizona, one of the two guys from Arizona is going to transfer, right? That guy's going to cost money, a lot of money, whoever it is. They're not going to come in here and run the option. Heinrich Harburg's willing to do it.
I don't think they're going to run the options. I think they're going to.
I agree.
They're going to sell the next guy. We're going to throw it. That's what Satterfield wants to do,
Right.
and he'll do it until somebody tells him we're not going to do that anymore. You're not going to be the coordinator anymore. Whatever. But
The original vision was Jake Peets was going to come here and be the quarterback coach. Jake Peets, the quarterback coach for the Los Angeles Rams, the Los Angeles Rams. Jake Peet, a quarterback coach at LSU. That was the story originally. Mm-hmm. And then he decided not to do that. He decided to stay with the Rams. And then Satterfield, who was going to be the tight ends coach, became the quarterback coach. Now, as you go into the offseason, here's the question. Is that how you want to keep it? If you want to keep it that way, then Marcus Satterfield needs to decide who the guy is, and then they need to align Marcus Satterfield's desires with the NIL team, and you need to decide how much money you want to give. That's the standard going forward. It can't be, well, Jeff Collins said this
Right.
guy's good.
Right.
Now
Totally.
you know what you have and what you don't have, and you need to marry that up. Or is the question, hey, Marcus Satterfield's going to run a pro-style Eagles, 49ers style offense, combination of both, a little bit of run, a little bit of pass, cool run shit, whatever. Then you got to say, do we want a quarterback coach to come in? And if you get a QB coach to come in, then all of a sudden you can say to the kid, listen, we're going to develop you for the NFL. So all those, the question you're asking is perfectly good, but it's the question on, but I think that what Tom's saying is they need to have a summit meeting that precedes that question.
Absolutely.
And that what they decide to do there then becomes the conversation. Because if you want to keep doing what you're doing right now, then Heinrich Harburg may be your only option. Because I don't think a lot of guys are going to come in here and do what he's doing.
So, what takeaways do you have from the offense this year then? Is this a total, throwaway year in terms of, is there any progress? Or was this just let's patch it together with what we have. We're going to try to get to a bowl game. And then we're going to get the guy, we're going to get the vision that we want. Do you take anything from what they've done offensively?
I agree with all that. No. What I take away is these guys took what they had and tried to make the best of it.
Yeah,
sure, which is great.
That's what you want.
Absolutely.
From a coaching staff. But now, that aside, let's see, okay, what do you got? What's your vision? What's your plan? And that's what has to be next. And the portal, imagine not having the portal. The portal allows you a chance to do that. So, but can they get Peets to come back? Can they? I think a quarterback coach will be.
Yeah.
I think in this day and age of transfer quarterbacks, it's probably a good idea to have that. Yeah. So so that guy can sell any of the transfers on. I mean, nobody I can sell the vision like that, like I can make like that. But I think what Harburg has really benefited from Rule in so many ways. Like you said, he kind of fell through the cracks, in the last, especially the way the last season went, and it was all Whipple, and he wasn't going to play he didn't want anybody else, and sometimes when you get a new coach, players suddenly, something clicks, or the coach sees something in a player. I think that's what happened here with Rule and Harburg. They immediately, remember that in camp? Mm-hmm. They talked about him.
Remember our February conversation with Rule?
Yeah.
He brought Harburg up.
I mean, so that they were kind of a good marriage. And I think, again, he's a good guy you have on your program, whether he's playing quarterback or not. And I think there's a role in that offense for him. Could he become a receiver? Again, I'm not throwing him away. He can be the quarterback, but he's got to do a lot better. And that starts Saturday.
It's so your statement about is there anything they can take? Yes. The run game design that they have with the running backs, they can move forward with. Speaking, and again, I'm not a coach or a former player or any of those things, but just speaking technically a little bit. I really like the way that they come around with pullers, with tight ends and fullbacks. I like the way they do that. That slice play worked really well against Michigan State, and that's where they're bringing the fullback over and they're bringing a tight end over at the same time, and then they're bringing the running back either between the alley that is created by the receiver and the tight end, or he's bending it back inside. Those are good football plays. The sweep to fleeks, the outside run. Mm-hmm. That's a good play. That's a good play. And they've developed that. That's obvious. Some of their read option stuff that's not related to the speed option has been good. So there are things that he has put in there that A, wasn't true of their team last year because Mark Whipple's run game was not nearly as complex. But B is also things that you can take forward. I think they got to get more tight ends. I think they have to get better tight ends. I think Fedoni is good. I think Borkircher's been pretty good. They need to get more, and they need to develop better. And Carter Nelson's fine. But you got to have a guy that can go kick someone's ass. If you're going to run this offense, and Michigan has this. Michigan has Colston Loveland, who is a great receiving tight end. And then they got these three other guys that are about 265 pounds, and their job is just to kick people's ass. They need a couple more of those. Maybe those are walk-ons. And then they need a running back. Like they need a running back. And maybe it's Emmett Johnson. But that you can take forward, I think. And I've loved the design of the end-arounds. I think they've run one jet sweep. I love the design of the end-arounds and the jet sweeps. Jalen Lloyd's got to hit it harder, and he's got to run it a little better. Because the design on those things, every single time they've run it, Evan, should have gotten more yards than it did.
Yeah.
Jalen Lloyd's got to run that thing like he's running the 100-meter dash. And if they do those things, then I think you can take that forward. The question mark is the pass game. They, for the first time this season, they ran 2 wide receiver screens on Saturday, and they were the worst-looking wide receiver screens I've seen here since I can't even remember. Tim Beck ran them all the time, and they were pretty. Mike Riley did a pretty good job with them, too. Scott Frost, that was like 2019 Purdue ugly, when Adrian was like hurt, and he was throwing the ball into the ground. I'm like, Nebraska doesn't look like it knows how to run a wide receiver screen. They got to work that. They got to fix that. And there's other things they got to fix too, but like there's things they can take forward. And the other thing they've got to learn how to do is they got to learn how to play with tempo. They got to learn how to play with tempo. You can't. I understand that you want to slow it all the way down and you want to be Minnesota, but if you want to go where you want to go, you got to learn how to. When you want to hit the gas pedal on a defense, you have to be able to go boom, 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 and that's not something they're good at yet.
Nope.
All those things have to improve in the offseason. And I don't know. Satterfield's got it. He's the one who's paid to do it. He's got to figure it out. Rule's got to help him. And they got to decide where they want a quarterback coach. But like the last 3 games, watch that offense. Because that offense can't just keep going out there and saying, we're going to turn it over 3 times and we're not going to gain any yards. Like, that can't happen. Or otherwise, big changes have to happen. They lead the nation in giveaways. And that's a trend of Satterfield's offenses. You can't lead the nation in giveaways, and they do. If they lose this weekend because of that, and I think they might.
It's possible.
And they got to go beat Wisconsin or Iowa to make a bowl game.
I know.
I think the defense.
A little tense.
I really think especially this week, the defense has to. Okay, you're the big brother. You're the big boy here. You've got to go. You've got to go make it happen. Yeah. They're going to have to carry this thing.
The crowd's going to show up. You think? Think the crowd will be there? And we're there for Purdue.
They
it was
weren't.
cold though.
I don't know. I mean, I think so.
We'll see. I hope you're right.
But it has to. I think usually the crowd reacts to what happens on the field.
Right.
So
doesn't Maryland strike you as a team that's in a lot of ways it's very similar to Nebraska, except they have a quarterback that is, one of the top in the college football, like you're talking about. Like, they're pretty similar in a lot of ways.
They are. I went and watched the entire Maryland Northwestern game on YouTube, and Maryland shouldn't have lost that game. But they did. They lost the game because their defensive coordinator kept blitzing the hell out of Northwestern, and Northwestern kept hitting screens and deep balls. Maryland will blitz the hell out of Nebraska. They're going to come after Harburg. They're going to try to sack him every time.
Yeah.
And Nebraska's going to have to deal with it. And if they can, they'll win the game. If they can't, I can't think that Tagovailoa is just going to get shut down. I think he's going to throw a couple of touchdowns.
It's supposed to be a windy day, but
He's a good player. Like, he's better than the Michigan State guys.
yeah.
So I think he's going to make a few plays, I don't know. I think that offense has to be able to handle it, and they've got to come up with a plan this week. We'll get to the picks, I guess, in a minute. What do you think of Husker basketball?
Good. I like the two big guys are. They bring an older presence to the team, which I think it needs.
Yeah.
I think that only helped last year with Sam Griesel showed up, and I'm the man, and I know what's going on, and here's how we have to do it. And Derek Walker followed him, and right behind. And I think they have that element right now. So listen to the two guys. The post-game press conference were basically two guys saying, "Here's what we need to do. Everybody follow us." Mm-hmm. So I like that. That they're very active inside. They create their own shots. They left hand, right hand. The whole team crashes the boards every play. There's a lot to like. At the risk of having Bruce Chubbuck come after me again, I want to say that they can make the NIT.
What did Bruce Chubbuck say? They should make the NCAA?
Oh, he didn't like that NIT stuff. You take that back. I'm going to show you. And so he did. They won. They made the NCAAs. They beat KU and beat Oklahoma State. Two top 10 teams, back-to-back home games.
All right.
But that was a long time ago.
Better team, too. They could use a Bruce Chubbuck right now.
Well, sure they could. Yeah, every year they could. Anyway, I think they've got a chance, but they really need to get Juwan Gary out of whatever he's doing to stop doing and get on the court. He's such a defensive edge guy, helps them, and of course Casey is the game changes when he's on the court. He just changes it all by himself, and there's no rush. The schedule helps them in a lot of ways, but he needs to get on the court at some point. So I like him. I think I can make postseason. I really do. That game with Creighton's going to be fun. That's going to be fun.
Well, the thing I heard most this week, other than the Peacock thing? Rip Prince.
Yeah, that's good.
That was a big deal.
I like this trend of Jordy Ball coming home. People wanted to be here. Caleb Benning. The top players in your sport want to be there. I like that, and that's a good trend to have. So, yeah, I mean it's a great league for women's basketball, but sometimes you can be the Pied Piper, and they've had that. Certainly the ladies on their team now have been those kind of players too. Sometimes it takes somebody who's the big name, and it just gives everything a little more credibility.
Yep.
So I don't know who that person would be for Nebraska baseball, but maybe it's their turn.
Well, yeah. I mean, the signing day today, there were a couple guys in this class. One's going to LSU, one's going to Arkansas. They have some good players too. But I'm curious, Sam.
In state.
In state, yes.
Yeah,
right.
I know.
Tell us about Britt Prince, though, Sam. Like you covered Nebraska women What does it mean for the program? You know what I mean? Like when you get a signing like that,
Yeah.
and at this point in Amy Williams' tenure there and what they're trying to do, like what does that mean?
I have covered the Nebraska women.
Yeah.
Mike Patterson is the expert on Britt Prince.
Well, from a Nebraska women's
okay.
basketball
So
perspective.
I've seen Britt Prince play. She is a great player. So she's a point guard who's a distributor, but she can also really push pace. And in college basketball, being able to do that is something. When she dribbles just fluid out in front, scores in transition, scores from the mid-range. These are things that Nebraska really needs. She's a decent three-point shooter, but I'll be honest with you, there are a lot of women who can shoot the three at the college basketball level, and Nebraska's got about 6 of them. So what's harder to find, and the part of Caitlin Clark's game that people pay very little attention to, is the ability to get all the way to the rim. And truth be told, Caitlin can do all that. She doesn't have to do it very often because people are so guarded against her going to the rim all the time, and she's so willing to shoot 33-footers that they'll let her shoot the 33-footer. And she'll do it, and she often misses them. But the reality is Britt Prince is really dangerous to the rim, and so what it does is it draws your defense out, and it creates lanes for your teammates, as it has for Caitlin. I'm not comparing her to Caitlin Clark. I think Caitlin Clark's a different player and a different demeanor, just a different kind of person. I don't know how good of a player Caitlin Clark will be in the WNBA. I think she'll be good, but I don't know how good. I think Britt could be a really good player in the WNBA because I think she's a point guard, and I think she can, control a game and dribble around and things like that. I'm not comparing her to Paige Beckers, but her game's more similar to Paige Beckers. And Paige is bigger. So Paige plays at UConn, and she's 6'1". But they're similar. They're more similar. Britt's number 2 team in this process was Indiana. It wasn't Creighton. It was Indiana. And Indiana has a former CU assistant on it. And Indiana's got a really good program. Really good. And they've had really good point guards. And so I think if you know a little bit about their team, Grace Berger at IU, players like that. I mean, that's what they wanted her to become. And Nebraska won out. They fended off IU, and I think Amy's to credit, but I think her daughter, who's also signed today, is also a credit. Kennedy Williams is a huge recruit for them. I think she's going to end up. She's 5'3", so there's only so much she can do. There is, okay? That's the reality of a 5'3" player. But she is going to be a glue for that team and a coach in a lot of ways. I think she'll end up being a huge asset to their team, and not just the coach's kid, although she will be that. I think she's going to end up being a person who – so don't overlook her signing today, because I think that's a big deal for that program. That program probably needs leadership more than it needs talent, and I think Kennedy Williams will actually provide that.
Now, let me throw out a name for you. With regard to Britt Prince, Alex Gordon. Okay? Here's where I'm going with this. A local kid who was the best player all through high school and embraced the role, knew what it meant, and took it to another level. That's what she did at Elkhorn North, a brand new school, her mom coaching. But she was the best player as a freshman, right? So her whole career, she's been the best player in the state. She's embraced it. She understands it, and she's taken it to up a notch every time. I love that because she knows what she knows what that means, and she knows what it means for her to go to Lincoln. And she said, "It's an honor. And I would play for my state school." And she understands what this is going to do, and she's ready for it, right? It wasn't like, oh, what do I do? I better go here. No, she's ready. Jordy Ball. I know what I can do. I know what I'm going to do there, and the impact that a player like that can have on a program. That's what I think. In some ways, Prince, whatever she does on the court, what she does off it will be equally as big. We're watching Jordy Ball turn this softball thing into a. Now, the women's basketball gets good crowds, but maybe that'll sell out. Maybe it'll become a bigger thing across the state. And will she bring other the players, with the other players, the better players,
Possible.
follow her, and especially in the age with the portal, is I got to go play in Nebraska for a year or two because she's there.
Yeah.
That's the impact I'm going to watch.
Yeah.
They signed 3 today. Amaya Hargrove is that kid from small town in Illinois. They got a player in their 25 class who's really good. Mackenzie Mathurin. I can't remember. She's from Oklahoma. But Tom's right. Like, people will want to come play with Britt and Allison Widener. So Allison's going to redshirt this year. So she and Britt Prince will have 2 years together. And that'll be a backcourt. Because you talk about, I mean, Allison Widener's the toughest player on the team. You talk about a backcourt, that's a backcourt. And Britt will learn a lot from Allison in, I think, a short amount of time. So there's a silver line. It's not really a silver lining to Widener's injury, but one of the silver linings is that she has 2 years to play with Prince. That's going to be a big deal. Those two will be really good together.
You know, it's a sneaky story here, Sam, is Amy Williams is becoming somebody who has been good. We didn't know what she was going to be all about when Sean Eichhorst hired her many years ago, and she's really built a program that a lot of girls want to be part of. And Jazz Shelley came back. Maybe that was NIL partially, but it's a program you want to be part of. And she just hasn't had that Sweet 16, the evidence in the tournament. But this is a big win for her. It elevates their program, elevates her. She's becoming what Connie Ori did a lot of things, and Amy Williams is doing things too.
You might get a couple comments for that. I'm not
no.
Hey, I love Amy.
Well, I'm just saying Connie went to the Sweet 16.
She did,
and so that's this program has got a lot of potential.
Agreed.
The Nebraska basketball in the state has never realized its potential.
Right.
But this is a place where it is.
Connie's great. I think that the league that Amy's in right now is just harder than what Nebraska was experiencing at the beginning of the Big Ten.
Absolutely. I'm not saying either one. I'm just saying that
this league's just harder.
I mean, I went to the Sweet 16 with the Nebraska women. It was a very big deal. So that's sort of where they need to go again, and maybe
I agree.
Can they get to a Final Four? Can they? I mean, why not?
They can do it if they.
It has to be on the table. You have to talk about it. You have to shoot for it.
Britt Prince will give them an opportunity.
Yeah,
I will say that. Like those two, Widener and Prince together, that gives them a real chance.
But again, women's sports in Nebraska,
it's going up.
It's
On the rise.
It's getting better.
I see Josie back there. She's women's sports in Nebraska, Josie. Again and again and again.
They got 2 national champions on the track team.
Volleyball.
Volleyball's good.
Volleyball's all right.
No, they're good for sure. They're good.
I'm just saying we've had this whole discussion. I'm just saying we had this whole discussion and we didn't even touch
They're
on the
good.
number 1 team in the country.
They're good.
So that's where we are.
Evan got to listen to me talk for 3 hours in East Lansing about how I thought Nebraska was going to win.
We had people in Lawrence,
That's right.
Kansas,
Reverse
trying to
sweep.
find the Nebraska Penn State game last Friday night. That's what it means.
We found
That's
it.
what they are. So,
Hey,
we
Nebraska volleyball is the best program in the country in volleyball for sure. Most talented team in college volleyball by
the
some
best
margin.
program in Lincoln by far too.
Yes, it is.
That's a whole other story.
Yes. They're by far they're going to win the national championship unless they don't. I guess I don't know. They're going to win it
I thought
unless they have a bad match.
last Friday night was for the Big Ten. If you lose that one and you lose to Wisconsin, you don't win the Big Ten.
Right.
So that was, I'm thinking Friday night, they at least want to win the Big Ten.
That's
get
right.
a share. But now they might be this kind of team that goes into Madison and wins.
Oh, I
think
think
it's
they
on the
will.
table.
If Lindsey Krause is healthy, I think they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we got to talk about the 2000 team. You talk about the kind of rat poison John Cook doesn't want to hear. Undefeated. Undefeated talk.
I wonder if we get to the point in the Final Four, you could ask him to compare the two teams, and which one would.
Do I have
be
to
better.
wait till then?
Well, you know what I mean, like, or whatever. Like, I would just be curious to see what he would say is the better team, because again, I was in college at that time. I would just say this team seems a lot.
Yeah,
better,
he won't do it in the moment. He won't do it, but doesn't mean I can't ask him.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see him compare the two. Let's get to the picks. Tom is Nebraska volleyball in the picks. He's at 78 and 24. Evan is at 69 and 33, and I'm at 66 and 36. Okay, you want to do the snake thing? You said.
Yeah.
All right.
Snake order.
So it'll go you, me, Tom.
And then the
Make
next
sense?
game, Tom picks first. You
Well,
pick. That's the snake
yes.
order. Yeah.
Correct.
Let's
All
do
right.
it.
Ole Miss, Georgia. Evan.
Georgia.
Then it's me.
Yep.
Georgia.
Where's it at?
Georgia.
Georgia.
Miami, Florida State. At Florida State. I'm first.
Now Tom goes first.
Tom goes first.
You're always in the middle.
Florida State. Florida State for me.
I better shake it up. I better go Miami.
Okay.
You can't catch up unless you go the other way.
Evan.
No.
Utah, Washington. At Washington.
Washington.
Oh boy.
Washington for me.
Yeah, Washington.
Tom, USC, Oregon. At Oregon.
Oregon Ducks.
Oregon for me.
Oregon.
Oregon for Evan. Evan, Tennessee at Missouri. At Missouri.
Boy.
Boy.
I'm slow on the uptake of Missouri being like really good. I got to go Tennessee.
Tennessee. I'll take Missouri.
MIZ.
Yeah, ZOU there. Tom, Michigan, Penn State.
Oh my God.
The big one coming early in this process.
Going with your head or your heart?
What does my heart say?
Well, everyone's heart
I'm
going
gonna
to
say.
thing.
I'm gonna say Michigan. I'm gonna say Michigan.
Michigan. I will take Michigan. Evan.
Penn State.
All right. Rutgers, Iowa. Evan.
Oh my. That'll be really interesting. Iowa.
Iowa for me.
Iowa.
Iowa for Tom. Tom, Northwestern, Wisconsin.
Wisconsin.
Wisconsin. Yeah. Wisconsin for me. Evan.
God, it's tempting to say Northwestern, but I'm going to go Wisconsin.
Indiana at Illinois. Evan.
Illinois.
Tom. Oh, it's me. It's my turn. I'm taking Indiana.
At Illinois.
Yeah. I am.
I'll go Illinois.
Illinois.
I love Tom Allen. He's always hoarse, but I can't do it.
Elio! Duke at North Carolina. Evan. I'm sorry, Tom. Duke at North Carolina.
Tar Heel.
I'll take North Carolina. Evan.
Same.
And the last one, Maryland, Nebraska. Evan.
Well, he's thinking about it.
Maryland.
I'm taking Maryland.
I'm taking Nebraska.
Late week switch. My 2-minute drill picks Maryland. I thought about it and I said the only reason I would pick Nebraska is because Maryland's 4-22 in November. If I look at the specific matchup, I think Maryland's a little better. Probably because of the quarterback. Very similar teams. One's got the better quarterback. That is our Pick 6 podcast for this week. We'll be back next week to talk about how I and Evan were wrong about Maryland. Our wives will be disappointed because Nebraska makes a bowl game. They like having us around for the holidays. And I don't know. We'll talk about something else, I'm sure. For Tom and Evan, I'm Sam. Thanks for listening.